On November 18, 1942, above Henderson Field near the Guadalcanal, a Japanese Zero pilot gripped his control stick tightly as he observed the unfamiliar twin-boom American fighters ascending from the runway. This day marked the first time pilots of the 339th Fighter Squadron engaged in combat against Japanese aircraft, signaling a pivotal moment that challenged long-held beliefs about aerial dominance. The distinctive twin-tailed planes climbed with unprecedented speed. An observation later conveyed to his squadron leader at Rabaul that hinted at the erosion of Japan's air supremacy. Through the canopy of his cockpit, he witnessed a scene that contradicted everything Japanese naval aviation doctrine had instilled in him. American P-38 Lightning fighters, which Japanese intelligence had previously dismissed as cumbersome and inefficient, ascended from sea level to combat altitude faster than his Mitsubishi A6M Zero could manage. In China, the Philippines, and even over Pearl Harbor, the Zero had established itself as dominant. No Allied fighter matched its climb rate or maneuverability. But here, above Guadalcanal, American pilots in their twin-engined aircraft were setting the terms of combat from heights unreachable by the Zero. In this first engagement, P-38s from the 339th Fighter Squadron downed 3 Japanese planes, executing attacks from altitudes that nullified the Zero's renowned turning capabilities. The calculus of aerial dominance was being rewritten not in theoretical manuals, but through the stark reality of superior altitude performance. This would soon shatter every assumption held by Japanese pilots about their invincibility, their aircraft, and their adversaries. The fall of Japanese air superiority had started well before this November day, though it was hard to believe at the time. Since December 7, 1941, Japanese naval aviators had swept across the Pacific with an aura of invincibility. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero, renowned for its range and agility, had earned a fearsome reputation. Its maximum speed of 332 miles per hour at critical altitude seemed formidable, and its tight turning radius made it lethal in traditional dogfights. Among the elite was Petty Officer First Class Saburo Sakai, who held multiple victories, including those from the China campaign, and had survived numerous engagements. By 1942, he had racked up 13 more kills during the Borneo campaign before being transferred to Rabaul, where he would claim most of his eventual 64 confirmed victories. The confidence of Sakai and his fellow pilots was absolute. Lieutenant Junichi Sasai, Sakai's immediate superior, addressed his squadron prior to combat operations. Intelligence indicated that American fighters over the Guadalcanal area originated from aircraft carriers supporting the invasion. These are likely standard Navy aircraft rather than Army planes. Japanese pilots anticipated encountering carrier-based F-4F Wildcats, which they had previously outmaneuvered. The first half of 1942 appeared to validate Japan's aerial superiority. Their aviators downed outdated Brewster Buffalo fighters over Singapore and annihilated Curtiss P-40 Warhawks above Java. They also overwhelmed British Hawker Hurricanes in Burma. Initially, the Zero achieved almost total dominance across the Pacific theater. Even when pitted against newer Allied fighters, Japanese pilots retained a psychological advantage due to their extensive combat experience and superior training techniques honed over years of battles in China. However, intelligence reports received by Japanese squadrons Midminus 1942 hinted at a new American fighter aircraft that seemed quite different from anything seen before. These reports described it as having twin engines, twin tails, and heavy armament concentrated in the nose. Most squadron commanders dismissed these accounts, believing no twin-engine plane could pose a threat to their agile Zeros. Japanese naval doctrine, emphasizing individual combat prowess and the decisive battle concept, lacked a framework for understanding such an aircraft. The P-38 Lightning was the sole truly successful twin-engine daytime fighter of World War II. It stemmed from Lockheed's response to a February 1937 U.S. Army Air Corps specification for a long-range interceptor. Under Clarence Kelly Johnson's leadership, his team developed something unprecedented, a fighter capable of exceeding 400 miles per hour, climbing to 40,000 feet, and carrying enough fuel for missions over 1,000 miles. The P-38's twin Allison V-1710 engines, each generating 1,150 horsepower with turbo supercharging, provided performance characteristics that Japanese engineers found hard to fathom. While the Zero was engineered for maximum maneuverability and minimal weight, often lacking armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks in early models, the Lightning embodied an entirely different design philosophy, emphasizing speed, altitude capability, firepower, and survivability. The first P-38s arrived in the Pacific theater without much fanfare but were plagued by mechanical issues. When they landed in Australia, problems with their designs became apparent, delaying their combat debut. However, by late 1942, these issues had been largely resolved, and experienced pilots from P-40 squadrons began transitioning to operate this new fighter. The 49th Fighter Group was still using P-40s, but would soon transition to the Lightning aircraft. These pilots had accumulated valuable combat experience against Japanese fighters, and understood that engaging a Zero in a turning dogfight was often fatal. The arrival of the P-38 provided them with an advantage, allowing them to engage on their terms. The first significant engagement between the Lightnings and Japanese fighters occurred on November 18, 1942, when pilots from the 339th Fighter Squadron, based at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, escorted Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress bombers. The encounter stunned everyone involved. Initially, Japanese pilots spotted unfamiliar twin-boomed aircraft climbing from the south and were uncertain if they were bombers or reconnaissance planes. By the time recognition was made, the P-38s had already gained a 5,000-foot altitude advantage. Flying at higher altitudes where Zeros struggled to operate effectively, the Lightnings patrolled above, utilizing their superior speed to position themselves strategically. They would then dive from great heights onto the less maneuverable Zero fighters below. The disparity in performance was evident. While the Zero excelled at low speeds and close-range maneuvers, its high-speed agility lagged behind that of the P-38. Above 250 mph, the Zero's controls became increasingly heavy, and above 300 mph, it was nearly impossible to maneuver effectively. In contrast, the P-38's hydraulically boosted control systems allowed for ease of handling even during high-speed dives approaching 500 mph. This technological gap provided a significant edge for American pilots in aerial combat. The surprise felt by Japanese pilots went far beyond just performance statistics. The Lockheed P-38 introduced a novel approach to aerial combat that the Japanese military had not foreseen. Its armament, which included 4.5 caliber machine guns and a 120mm cannon concentrated in the nose, delivered devastating firepower without the need for complex gun convergence calculations required by wing-mounted weapons. The P-38's turbo superchargers were equally revolutionary to Japanese comprehension. These engines made the aircraft one of the first Allied fighters capable of performing well at high altitudes while also dampening exhaust noise, making its approach often undetected until it was too late. In contrast, the Zero's Nukagima Sakai engine generated 950 horsepower at sea level, but lost power dramatically with increasing altitude. By 20,000 feet, output dropped to only 750 horsepower. The P-38's turbo-supercharged Alicans maintained consistent performance up to much higher altitudes, giving them a significant edge in vertical maneuvers during aerial combat. By early 1943, the psychological toll on Japanese pilots was becoming evident through squadron reports and personal correspondence. The notion of the Zero's invincibility, carefully nurtured since its debut in China, began to erode. Pilots expressed ongoing tension due to the fear that a P-38 could appear from any direction at any moment. Lieutenant Commander Tadashi Nukagima faced what would become a notorious double-team maneuver by enemy pilots. Two Wildcats ambushed his aircraft. While he managed to get behind one of them, he never had a chance to fire before a teammate of the Grumman pilot attacked him from the side. Fuming with rage upon returning to Rabaul, Nukagima recounted how he was forced to dive and escape. This encounter with Wildcats paled in comparison to what awaited when facing P-38s. Saburo Sakai would later acknowledge this himself. The Zero fighters were no longer able to engage P-38s effectively, except in extraordinarily rare circumstances that rarely occurred. This acknowledgement by Japan's legendary ace had a profound impact within the pilot community. The true tactical situation was even more dire than what individual combat statistics indicated. The P-38's extensive range allowed it to operate across the expansive Pacific theater at will. With a range of 16 miles thanks to drop tanks, the Lightning could escort bombers deep into Japanese territory or conduct fighter sweeps far from American bases. This meant that Japanese pilots could no longer rely on numerical superiority over their own land. The mission to assassinate Yamamoto served as the ultimate demonstration of P-38 dominance. Nothing highlighted this supremacy more dramatically than Operation Vengeance on April 18, 1943, when 16 P-38s executed a 435-mile interception mission that resulted in the shooting down of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. The operation demanded precise navigation over water, extreme range, and the ability to engage both bombers and their fighter escorts. Major John Mitchell led the mission, with pilots flying at an altitude of just 50 feet above the ocean to avoid radar detection before climbing rapidly to intercept altitude. The psychological blow inflicted on Japanese naval aviation was immense. Their revered leader, accompanied by 6 Zero escort fighters, had been tracked down and eliminated by American fighters operating near their range limits. Kenji Yanagiya, a Zero pilot who was part of Yamamoto's fighter escort, observed the attack firsthand. His testimony revealed the astonishment among Japanese pilots at the P-38's capabilities. The Lightning pilots appeared out of nowhere, executed a precise strike, and retreated before the Zeros could mount an effective counterattack. American pilots had meticulously planned the interception down to the minute, arriving just when Yamamoto's aircraft were most vulnerable during their descent for landing. This level of operational planning, combined with the P-38's performance-marked capabilities that Japan simply could not replicate. As 1943 progressed, American pilots honed their tactics to exploit the advantages offered by the P-38. The boom and zoom tactic, involving a high-speed dive from altitude followed by rapid climbing away after firing, became standard procedure. Japanese pilots found themselves at a disadvantage when faced with these tactics. During their first aerial engagement with P-38 fighters, 15 Japanese planes were shot down for only one loss on the American side. Such lopsided victories became more frequent as U.S. pilots gained familiarity and confidence in their new aircraft. The Japanese attempted various countermeasures, including using dive brakes to prevent overshooting attacks and luring P-38s into low-altitude dogfights. They also experimented with loose formations to better detect incoming threats. However, none of these strategies proved consistently effective due to the significant performance gap between the two aircraft types. The disparity was rooted in industrial capabilities, as the P-38's superiority reflected a fundamental difference in American manufacturing capacity that Japanese pilots were only just beginning to comprehend. By war's end, over 10,000 P-38s had been produced across 18 distinct models, each incorporating enhancements based on combat feedback. The arrival of the P-38J model in late 1943 brought hydraulic aileron boosters for improved maneuverability, resolved cockpit heating issues that had affected earlier variants in Europe, and featured upgraded turbo superchargers for enhanced high-altitude performance. In contrast, Japanese aircraft development struggled to make substantial improvements beyond the Zero design. Captain Minoru Genda, the tactical mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack, privately acknowledged to his colleagues in mid-1943 that they were not merely facing a superior fighter, but a relentless system of continuous improvement that Japan could not hope to match. Each new American aircraft encountered was better than its predecessor. This technological disparity was compounded by a divergence in pilot quality. By mid-1943, Japan was struggling to replace its seasoned pilots as quickly as they were being lost in combat. The stark reality of Japan's inability to replenish war losses effectively in terms of both materials and skilled personnel was becoming increasingly evident. Training programs had been drastically reduced from 2 years to less than 6 months, resulting in new pilots joining combat units with only around 200 hours of flight experience. In contrast, American pilots were arriving at their assignments with between 400 and 600 hours of training behind them. They had honed their skills through extensive practice in advanced training units, analyzed gun camera footage from real battles, and trained on a variety of aircraft types. Upon transitioning to P-38s, they received specialized instruction for twin-engine operations and high-altitude combat tactics. The mechanical reliability of the P-38 also played a crucial role. Its dual-engine configuration offered an additional advantage that Japanese pilots had not fully grasped: enhanced survivability. Even when heavily damaged, these aircraft could still make it back to base using just one engine. This reliability factor had a significant psychological impact on the opposing side. Pilots flying single-engine planes over vast expanses of ocean faced certain death if their engines failed. The Zero's extended range came at the expense of minimal armor and self-sealing fuel tanks, meaning that a single bullet could result in fiery destruction or a perilous swim in shark-infested waters. The intelligence war also revealed Japan's growing awareness of its disadvantage. By late 1943, Japanese intelligence was advising pilots to avoid engaging P-38s due to their terrifying diving speed and ability to appear unexpectedly with pinpoint accuracy. These warnings circulated among squadrons, indicating a clearer understanding of the threat posed by American aircraft. A captured document from December 1943 noted that the P-38 fighter should be regarded as the most dangerous U.S. plane in the Pacific due to its superior speed and climb rate compared to anything Japan could match. Engagements were advised only when numerical superiority and advantageous position could ensure a favorable outcome. This acknowledgement that Japanese pilots should evade American fighters marked a profound shift from the traditional warrior ethos that had long characterized Japanese naval aviation. The psychological toll was immense. Pilots trained to engage in battle at every chance were now instructed to flee their adversaries. This paradigm shift is vividly illustrated by the rise of American P-38 aces, who demonstrated the fighters' overwhelming superiority. Major Richard Bong became America's top ace with an impressive 40 victories, all achieved in P-38s. Major Thomas B. Maguire also amassed 38 victories before his untimely death in January 1945. These achievements, accumulated over just 2 years of combat, surpassed the scores of most Japanese aces who had fought for 3 or 4 years. Over 18 Japanese aircraft were downed by P-38s in the Pacific Theater. Each loss represented not only an aircraft, but also a skilled pilot Japan could scarcely replace. This attrition severely eroded Japanese air power as training programs struggled to produce even minimally competent replacements. Technological advancements continued throughout 1944, with the P-38 evolving while Japanese aircraft development stagnated. The P-38L model featured upgraded engines, offering enhanced altitude performance and improved cooling systems, along with rocket launchers for ground attack missions. These aircraft could carry substantial bomb loads, in addition to their standard armament. As Japanese pilots witnessed P-38s shifting from air superiority roles to conducting devastating ground attacks, they realized they were up against not just a superior fighter, but an incredibly versatile weapons system. Beyond the technological edge, Japanese pilots also grappled with understanding the American approach to aerial combat, which differed significantly from their own tactical doctrines. Japanese aviators had turned aerial combat into an art form, stressing individual prowess and martial spirit. In contrast, American pilots approached it as a technical challenge, leveraging advanced technology and strategic planning. Post-war reflections by Commander Masatake Okumiya, who analyzed battle reports, revealed that the Japanese could not accept that sheer bravery was insufficient. Reports of P-38 superiority were met with calls for increased dedication and aggressive spirit, leading to a misinterpretation of courage as an equivalent to capability. This cultural mindset hindered effective adaptation. While American pilots continually improved their tactics based on combat experience, Japanese training remained focused on aerobatic skills and individual combat excellence, qualities that proved ineffective against opponents who refused to engage under those conditions. The introduction of radar technology in P-38s by Midmanis 1944 marked a significant turning point, as the Japanese lacked the means to counter this advancement. Darkness, once a refuge for Japanese operations, now offered no respite from aerial threats. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944 saw the American Navy's Hellcats facing weakened Japanese pilots, whose numbers had been depleted over years of attrition against P-38s and other American fighters. The Marianas Turkey Shoot, where more than 300 Japanese aircraft were downed with minimal losses to the Americans, highlighted a process that the P-38 had significantly accelerated. Vice Admiral Takuji Ozu, who commanded the Japanese carrier forces, later acknowledged that his pilots lacked both experience and suitable aircraft to compete against their American counterparts. In essence, the aerial war was lost well before this decisive engagement. Desperation and creativity marked the transition from 1944 to 1945, as Japan sought ways to counter the formidable P-38 Lightning. Ramming tactics were employed when conventional methods proved futile. Phosphorus anti-aircraft shells designed to ignite fuel tanks of P-38s also emerged. Efforts were made to develop twin-engine fighters, but none reached significant operational levels. The Kawasaki K-102 was Japan's answer to the P-38, entering service in 1945 and producing only 238 aircraft. Despite being introduced 3 years after the P-38, it lagged behind in performance with slower speeds, poor climb rates, and persistent engine issues. By early 1945, Japanese pilots had ceased talking about air superiority or even parity. Survival became their primary concern. The P-38, alongside other American fighters, secured dominance over Japanese skies. Saburo Sakai acknowledged that the P-38 shattered the confidence of Zero fighter pilots. The statistics highlight this dominance. Over 18 Zero Japanese aircraft were destroyed by P-38s alone. Major Richard Bong achieved 40 victories, all in P-38s, while Major Thomas Maguire reached 38 kills. No other Army Air Force fighter claimed as many Japanese planes as the P-38. In contrast, Japanese losses mounted tragically. By the war's conclusion, Japan had suffered significant losses, with over 90% of its seasoned pilots who started the conflict no longer surviving. In 1945, the typical Japanese pilot had accumulated fewer than 100 hours of flying experience, and was more akin to sacrificial lambs rather than combat-hardened warriors. They faced an adversary they could not possibly overcome. Post-war interviews conducted by American occupation forces with remaining Japanese pilots and commanders unveiled the profound psychological impact inflicted by the P-38. Commander Masatake Okumiya confessed that the P-38 shattered their confidence entirely. Prior to this revelation, they had a firm belief in their superiority, both in terms of aircraft and training. The encounter with the P-38 demonstrated that their assumptions were misplaced. It was not merely about speed or armament. It epitomized a warfare style Japan could not contend with. One pilot recounted his initial confrontation with the P-38, expressing astonishment at discovering an American plane capable of outmaneuvering the vaunted Zero in every aspect: outrunning, outclimbing, and outdiving. This performance gap was starkly evident during technical analyses conducted after Japan's surrender. Technical evaluations revealed the significant disparity between Japanese aircraft and their counterparts. For instance, the Mitsubishi A6M had a maximum speed of 332 miles per hour at critical altitude, with a service ceiling of 33,000 feet, but struggling beyond 25,000 feet. Its climb rate was measured at 310 feet per minute, decreasing as altitude increased. The aircraft boasted an impressive range of 1930 miles for its era, yet it lacked armor and self-sealing fuel tanks in early models. Armament consisted of two 7.7 machine guns and two 20mm cannon with limited ammunition capacity. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning boasted a top speed exceeding 400 miles per hour and a service ceiling of 44,000 feet. It could climb at a rate of 4,750 feet per minute at sea level and had a range of 16.0 miles when equipped with drop tanks. Its armament included four 50 caliber machine guns and one 120mm cannon, complemented by extensive pilot armor and standard self-sealing fuel tanks. The statistics highlighted a significant disparity. While the Zero was designed for a conflict where individual skill and agility were decisive factors, the P-38 exemplified warfare driven by technological advancements, production capabilities, and systematic improvements. The industrial context played a crucial role. American superiority in aircraft manufacturing was a direct reflection of its unparalleled industrial power compared to Japan's limited capacity. During World War II, Lockheed managed to produce more than 10,000 P-38s, whereas Japan manufactured around 10,000 Zero fighters over an extended period, with diminishing quality as the war continued. American production techniques, drawing from assembly line methods in automobile manufacturing, allowed for faster production of P-38s than Japan could train pilots to fly them. Each P-38 incorporated thousands of precisely engineered components, underscoring the advanced industrial coordination that Japan struggled to match. The Allison engines powering the aircraft were remarkable feats of engineering, featuring supercharging technology and high-quality manufacturing processes unavailable in Japanese industry. In contrast, Japanese engine production required meticulous hand fitting and adjustment, whereas American engines could be interchanged easily, streamlining maintenance and boosting reliability. By 1944, the disparity in pilot training had widened into a significant gap. American P-38 pilots underwent specialized twin-engine instruction, including over 100 hours of flight time on twin-engine trainers before transitioning to the P-38. Procedures for handling engine failures and managing asymmetric thrust, high-altitude physiology and the management of oxygen systems, training in gunnery using camera guns and towed targets, formation flying tactics and mutual support procedures, escape and evasion drills, extensive knowledge of aircraft systems. By 1944, Japanese training included only 50 to 100 hours of basic flight instruction, minimal combat tactics education, limited gunnery practice due to a scarcity of ammunition, no specialized high-altitude training, and an emphasis on morale over tactical doctrine. The result was predictable. American pilots arrived in the theater as skilled professionals, while Japanese pilots were barely competent and treated as expendable sacrifices. The P-38 aircraft brought about fundamental changes in aerial combat tactics, rendering the traditional turning dogfight obsolete, a style that had dominated since World War I. Though the P-38 could not outmaneuver the A6M Zero below 200 miles per hour, its superior speed and rate of climb allowed it to employ energy tactics effectively. American pilots developed a tactic known as the high-side pass, where they would approach from above and behind an enemy formation, dive through with guns firing, then zoom back up before the enemy could respond. This tactic was only possible due to the P-38's performance advantages and made Japanese defensive formations ineffective. The Japanese attempted to adapt by deploying fighters at various altitudes, but this dispersed their forces, making coordination difficult. They also tried using clouds for cover, but the P-38's speed enabled it to quickly locate hidden enemy aircraft. The distinctive appearance of the P-38 became a powerful psychological weapon, initially perceived as heavy and cumbersome due to its twin-boom design. It soon symbolized American technological superiority that instilled fear in Japanese pilots even before combat commenced. Ground crews reported that mere rumors of P-38s in the area would cause Japanese pilots to delay missions or request additional escort fighters. The aircraft's nickname among Japanese pilots, 2 planes, 1 pilot, reflected both their confusion about its design and respect for its capabilities. Strategic implications included a realization that technology could create such an overwhelming advantage that spirit alone was insufficient. This understanding influenced Japanese strategic decisions, accelerating the adoption of kamikaze tactics as conventional air combat became increasingly futile. The retreat of seasoned pilots to defend home islands, the cessation of offensive air missions by mid-1944, the allocation of resources towards last-ditch wonder weapons, and the acknowledgement that victory was unattainable through conventional warfare all marked a turning point. In October 1944, Admiral Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, privately admitted, "We no longer possess an air force capable of conducting regular operations." American fighters, particularly the P-38, had effectively neutralized Japan's aerial capability. The superiority of American maintenance and logistics played a crucial role. Although initial concerns surrounded the complexity of the P-38's twin-engine design, it highlighted another American strength: advanced maintenance and logistical capabilities. P-38 squadrons managed to maintain operational rates surpassing 80% even under primitive Pacific conditions. In contrast, Japanese units flying simpler single-engine fighters struggled to achieve a 50% operational readiness by 1944. American maintenance crews, many drawn from the civilian aviation and automotive industries, introduced systematic approaches to aircraft upkeep. They developed specialized tools, standardized procedures, and preventive maintenance schedules. Meanwhile, Japanese maintenance largely relied on individual skill rather than organized methods. The navigation technology gap further disadvantaged the Japanese. P-38s were equipped with radio direction-finding equipment that enabled accurate navigation over vast Pacific distances. This allowed them to home in on radio beacons, locate their bases under poor weather conditions, and conduct precise time-on-target attacks. In contrast, Japanese pilots primarily relied on dead reckoning and visual navigation methods, which severely limited their operational flexibility. This navigational advantage proved crucial during long-range missions like the Yamamoto interception mission, which required precision over 435 miles of open ocean to arrive at a specific location at an exact time, a feat that Japanese pilots could not have accomplished with their available technology. The dominance of P-38s fundamentally undermined the Imperial Japanese Navy's strategic reliance on naval aviation. After suffering heavy losses at the Battle of Midway, carrier air groups were further decimated by American fighters such as the P-38 and others during subsequent island campaigns. By 1944, Japanese carriers sailed with understrength squadrons comprising inadequately trained pilots. Prior to the Battle of the Philippine Sea, Vice Admiral Yamamoto Ozawa, who commanded the 1st Mobile Fleet, reported, "Our pilots are not prepared for aerial combat against American fighters. They struggle to land on aircraft carriers and are ill-equipped to engage P-38s and Hellcats effectively. We are essentially sending them to their deaths." This realization led to a profound shift in Japanese military strategy. The traditional Bushido code, which stressed spiritual fortitude and individual heroism, was found wanting against the industrial might of American warfare. As a result, younger officers started questioning fundamental tenets of Japanese military doctrine. This cultural reevaluation extended beyond the armed forces. Surviving pilots returning from combat painted a picture of American technological superiority that contradicted long-held beliefs about Western decline and Japanese spiritual supremacy. Economically, the production costs associated with each P-38 were around $97,000 in 1944 dollars. Despite their high expense, America was able to manufacture these aircraft en masse. In contrast, Japan grappled with producing even a fraction of that number due to resource constraints and industrial limitations. For instance, the amount of aluminum needed for just one P-38 often surpassed what many Japanese factories could procure in an entire month. The most compelling evidence of the P-38's impact comes from first-hand accounts by Japanese pilots who had faced these formidable aircraft in battle. These pilots, known for never showing any sign of vulnerability, universally acknowledged the overwhelming superiority of the P-38 during post-war interviews. Lieutenant Saburo Sakai stands out among them. The P-38 had a distinct advantage at high altitudes, where it could patrol undisturbed by Japanese Zero fighters, which lacked the necessary altitude capabilities. This enabled the P-38 to position itself strategically before diving down to engage enemy aircraft with devastating effect. It was an ultimate form of humiliation for the Zero pilots. However, perhaps the most profound embarrassment did not stem from combat losses, but rather from the reconnaissance abilities of the P-38. Variants of this aircraft were responsible for 90% of aerial photography in the Pacific Theater, constantly monitoring Japanese positions, movements, and preparations. The same fighter that dominated in battle also meticulously documented Japan's defeat. Realizing that their every move was being observed, analyzed, and photographed by these high-flying reconnaissance planes filled Japanese commanders with dread. The P-38 F-5 photo reconnaissance variant, stripped of weapons, but retaining its full performance capabilities, could effortlessly photograph enemy installations without fear of interception. Zero fighters dispatched to defend against them were unable to reach the necessary altitude. The impact of this aerial superiority extended well beyond the war years. It profoundly influenced Japanese aviation development and military strategy in the post-war era, as well as broader cultural attitudes towards technology versus tradition. Many surviving Japanese pilots became staunch advocates for technological advancement in Japan after the war. They understood from personal experience that bravery alone was insufficient without advanced capabilities. These insights shaped Japan's post-war focus on embracing technology and industrial growth. Saburo Sakai, who went on to become a successful businessman following the conflict, frequently discussed the lessons he learned while facing off against the P-38. The experience taught us that we must never lag behind technologically again. It revealed that industrial might, not warrior spirit, is crucial in modern warfare. The race for technical innovation was evident. The evolution of the P-38 throughout the war highlighted American advantages in rapid technological advancements. Issues discovered on the battlefield were swiftly addressed in subsequent production models. Compressibility problems led to the addition of dive flaps. Cold conditions in cockpits prompted improved heating systems. Roll rate concerns resulted in hydraulically boosted ailerons. Japanese aircraft development, hampered by limited resources and institutional rigidity, could not keep pace with these improvements. The Zero fighter that fought in 1945 was largely the same as the one used at Pearl Harbor, with only minor enhancements. By contrast, the P-38L model of 1945 was significantly superior to its predecessor, the P-38E from 1942. General Kenny, commander of Allied Air Forces in the Southwest Pacific, stated that P-38 pilots flying at high altitudes could choose when and where to engage, often with devastating consequences for Japanese pilots. This ability to dictate engagement terms marked a revolution in aerial combat that Japanese military doctrine failed to counter effectively. The numbers speak for themselves. By war's end, the top two American aces had collectively shot down 78 Japanese aircraft using P-38s, while the highest surviving Japanese ace achieved only 64 victories over 6 years of conflict. These statistics demonstrate an unsustainable attrition rate for Japan. Beyond mere technological superiority, the P-38's dominance over the Zero symbolized broader strategic and tactical advantages as well. This highlighted significant contrasts in military strategy, industrial capabilities, and innovation. Japanese forces were geared towards a brief, resolute conflict where valor would triumph over material limitations. In contrast, the P-38 symbolized America's readiness for an extended war of production and technological advancement. The shock felt by Japanese pilots upon encountering the P-38 was akin to confronting modern warfare itself. This aircraft epitomized the systematic integration of science, engineering, and industrial management into military operations. Meanwhile, the samurai ethos, despite its nobility, proved ineffective against such advancements. the human toll. Beneath the cold numbers and technical details lay profound personal suffering. Countless young Japanese pilots with limited flight experience faced P-38s in outdated aircraft, knowing they stood little chance of survival. Letters discovered after the war reveal their fatalistic acceptance. One pilot wrote to his mother just before a doomed mission. "Mother, I face the twin-tailed devils tomorrow and do not expect to return. They soar higher and faster than we can comprehend. I will fulfill my duty, but it is futile." He was shot down over Rabaul in March 1944. His story mirrored thousands of others, youthful lives lost to an insurmountable technological disparity that valor could not surmount. The enduring impact. The P-38's influence stretched far beyond World War II, impacting Cold War-era aircraft design in both the United States and the Soviet Union, which developed high-altitude interceptors based on lessons gleaned from the Lightning. The concept of leveraging technology to gain a decisive edge became central to American military strategy. For Japan, the experience led to a post-war emphasis on quality over quantity and advanced technology, rather than mass mobilization in their self-defense forces. The profound impact of technological inferiority left an indelible mark on Japanese military thought. The end of an era was marked by the shock felt by Japanese pilots when they realized that they could neither outmaneuver nor outclimb the P-38 Lightning. This moment signaled the demise of aerial warfare dominated by individual pilot prowess, where personal skill and bravery were paramount. Instead, it ushered in an era defined by industrial might, production capabilities, and systematic innovation as key determinants of success. Saburo Sakai's post-war reflections underscored how the P-38 shattered the Zero fighter pilot's morale. It wasn't merely about the aircraft's superior speed or climb rate. Rather, it epitomized a new paradigm in warfare that Japan could not match. Surviving Japanese pilots were forced to confront harsh realities. Courage alone was insufficient without technological advancements. The P-38 did more than down enemy planes. It dismantled deeply held beliefs about air combat, honor, and national strength. By 1943, the Zero, which had been invincible in 1941, was rendered obsolete. Pilots who had honed their skills through aerobatic maneuvers found these abilities irrelevant against an opponent that refused to engage on those terms. Ultimately, the twin-tailed Lightning represented more than just a superior fighter. It symbolized a seismic shift in the nature of aerial warfare for Japanese pilots. This exemplified American industrial prowess, technological advancement, and methodical military strategy that would shape the latter half of the 20th century. The final testament comes from Saburo Sakai, a renowned Japanese fighter ace who endured the war and later reflected on its profound lessons. The P-38 imparted the hardest lesson. The era of samurai warriors was coming to an end. Over the Pacific skies, we confronted our future, and it overwhelmed us completely. This encounter left a lasting impact, serving as a reminder that in wartime, technological superiority and industrial might ultimately triumph over traditional valor and individual bravery. Japanese pilots who could not outmaneuver or outperform the P-38 Lightning learned this harsh lesson through the loss of their lives, aircraft, and their nation's aspirations for supremacy. They had faced off against the arsenal of democracy with the spirit of the samurai warrior, only to find that the P-38 Lightning was its resolute response. A precision weapon delivered at high speeds from great altitudes, which no courage could counteract.